This summer, we're traveling through a worship series that has us exploring a different national park or monument each week. We're looking at what makes each holy space unique, as well as what we might learn from it to inform and enrich our lives. Today's focus is on Cuyahoga Valley National Park in what is now Ohio, and our theme is restoration. As we celebrate the sacredness of our preserved lands, we also need to acknowledge the sacredness of these places to the first people who lived here, as well as the injustices that caused great harm. Archaeological evidence indicates that Indigenous peoples were active in the Cuyahoga Valley for more than 13,000 years, with the earliest inhabitants moving in after the Wisconsin Glacier retreated. Initially, there wasn't much edible plant life, but a group often referred to as Paleo-Indians lived seasonally in small groups and hunted large game. Around 10,000 years ago, the climate of the Cuyahoga Valley began to resemble the climate that is there today. During this early period, settlement by native people began to happen in the area. Edible plant life increased, and crops such as squash, maize, sunflowers, and beans were domesticated. Tools became more sophisticated and technologies such as the canoe evolved. During the early woodland era of approximately 1100 to 2500 years ago, Indigenous people built complex earthenworks as ceremonial and burial sites. They began to build more permanent homes, and they made agricultural advances that allowed for larger settlements. During this time, the Indigenous people in this area became connected with a larger group often called the Hopewell culture, which formed a vast network of trade and cultural exchange through the region. As we mentioned in previous worship services, Hopewell people traveled as far as the area now called Yellowstone and Grand Teton National Parks to collect obsidian, a 4,000-mile round trip. They also traveled to Lake Superior for copper. The Hopewell culture and cultures that followed are renowned for beautiful pottery and artwork. The Lenape Nation is the one most associated with the Cuyahoga Valley area, but there are several more who lived or regularly traveled through, including the Wyandot, Iroquois, Ottawa, Ojibwe, Munsee, Potawatomi, Miami, Catawba, and Shawnee. The Lenape and other groups were displaced from the area largely by the white fur trade and other industries that followed. Those industries did extreme ecological damage to the area. The damage by industry was so extreme that the Cuyahoga River caught fire 11 times between 1868 and 1969 and was often described as oozing rather than flowing in the 1970s. As with many other Indigenous groups, most of the Lenape were forced into Oklahoma, with other groups ending up in Kansas and some as far as Ontario. Due to a history of violence, broken treaties, and forced relocation, there are no established native nations in Ohio. Yet again, great harm was done to the people and to the land. We look back on these tragic events, not to feel a sense of guilt, but with a sense of a responsibility to do better. While much has been done to help heal this land, there is still much work to do. We remain committed to the restoration of land, the restoration of our communities, and the restoration of ourselves as we reconnect to the earth we share.